Okay.
You know what I may need, you guys?
Jared blank Villery. Can't remember your middle name.
Wow.
What is it?
Oh, Micah.
Oh, yeah.
I've never heard that.
See?
That's a sick middle name. I love it. We are here with a very, very dear friend,
Dun, 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 dun.
Jared Micah Villery. And he's already giggling, and I love it. Well, I was realizing something earlier that made me really, it was just crazy. The timing of this is kind of crazy because 10 years ago exactly, I was writing you letters telling you I was going to tell your story.
Whoa.
I was 20 years old and you were
huh?
30 years old. And I was like, we're going to tell your story. And a decade had to pass before we did this, but I'm so glad that it's happening.
Me too.
Let's
Me too.
go.
And hey, I wasn't lying. We're telling your story now.
Yeah.
So let's go. Girl, chill.
She's not like being not the center of attention, right?
No. So just for anybody listening, paying attention, we know Jared because he was our brother's best friend.
I think he was like his only true friend in prison.
Maybe one of his only true friends ever.
Yeah.
And so he holds a very special place in our heart and has become very close to our family. And we know a decent amount about you and about your experience, but I'm going to treat it like I don't, so that everybody who doesn't know you gets the full Jared Micah Villery rundown. And I wrote some hard-hitting questions, buddy, so let's fucking go.
I just feel like I'm getting in trouble when I hear my middle name. That's always like the full name, you're in deep shit.
Deep shit.
I feel like that's such a man thing to say. Oh my God, Jared. Okay, so we're going to start at the beginning because I don't feel like it makes sense to start talking about your really big life experience without understanding kind of how you got to where you were and just what your childhood was like. So let's lay it out. How was your childhood? Any highlights that you'd want to talk about? What were you like as a kid? And what was your overall kind of sentiment, like feeling about life as you moved through your childhood?
I was kind of a serious kid, because I was
Shocker.
around, right? I know, right? I was around adults a lot more than kids for the most part. My dad, he's a sweetheart that he is, he didn't really baby talk me. I remember being like 4 and, big ass words. I didn't know what the fuck he was talking about, but he always, go look it up in the dictionary, that type of thing. And, I don't know, childhood it was cool. It had its ups and downs like anything. I mean, you guys actually talked about it on your episode with Ryan. I had always known that's kind of the reason Ryan and me clicked, we both coming from, saying modest means is putting it lightly, and in like hyper rich areas, so growing up in Beverly Hills in a 1-bedroom apartment. And, the wealth is the type of shit you see on movies and it's real and, and so, I mean, that was difficult. I didn't fit in. I didn't fit in being, I wouldn't say poor, blue collar. Dad was a independent contractor, mom worked off and on different things. And eventually she worked for FEMA and was gone a lot. And so dad was primary caregiver for a very long time. And it's difficult. When you don't fit in, you look for a way to fit in, right? So I went to El Rodeo. I went there from like kindergarten to 5th grade and fought a lot, because kids picked on me. We broke down car, that type of shit. And, they got 4 or 5 German cars in their driveway.
Yeah.
So again, not fitting in, that type of thing. And I don't know. I found my first outlet was sports. Played in leagues. And so that was my outlet, but I don't know. I had kind of a bad temper as a kid. I was stubborn as a damn mule. And, but it's good because I've learned to harness that towards my litigation pursuits. I just never stop. That's the thing. I just won't stop. And I've always been kind of like that. It helped me get through a lot of shit. It's because it's like you just don't ever give up on anything. So, God, after I switched schools, I left El Rodeo in 5th grade and I went to Beverly Vista for fifth grade, the middle of fifth grade to eighth grade. I fit in a little bit more there. It was funny. They used to call us the apartment dwellers, right? Beverly Hills. Well, because most people lived, big houses and shit, but everything like
Kids actually called you that?
Yeah, they called a lot of us, like, people who lived in apartments. Oh yeah, those are the apartment dwellers. Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. And, so never really had my own room, growing up. I mean, I had kind of, when I was like, I don't know, 14, 15, something like that. My mom tried to turn the dining room kind of into my room. It became my room for the most part, but it didn't have a door on it.
Mm-hmm.
And, I became kind of the bad boy, fighting all the time. For a long time, that was my identity, right?
Yeah.
Being kind of feared. I relished it because it was better to have them fear you than try to disrespect you. That's how I looked at it. So I, continued playing sports till I went to high school. And this was kind of the pivotal, I would say it's, like probably one of the most pivotal moments in my life, that you were going down two paths and it led down the wrong one. So I played basketball as a power forward and I was good. By that time I was really good. So I played for my freshman team and they wanted me to play football, right? They wanted you to be a 3-sport athlete. I was really good at football. I could throw, but we didn't have insurance, didn't have the money. I haven't had insurance my whole life. So because of that, and my dad was just worried about me getting injured regardless of the lack of medical care available. He didn't want me fucking breaking my neck, whatever it was. So he wouldn't sign off on it.
Mm.
And so coaches thought it was like me being lazy, not wanting to. I actually did later that year. I did some of the spring conditioning, and because I tried to string them along, like saying, "Yeah, I'll figure it out," and but then my dad wouldn't sign off on it, and that was a wrap. And so they started benching me. I was a starter. Then I went to sixth man. Then I went on the bench because they just kind of gave up on me. Then I got in. No surprises. My freshman basketball coach was also, towards the end of the year, my English teacher, right?
Mm.
Again, stubborn, hard-headed, talk shit, not the best characteristics. And we got into it one day. This is after he had already benched me, and I was like, I cussed him out in class, because I was pissed. I didn't, unbecoming, but I did it. And then it was really a wrap. And so I was 14 then. And that was kind of, because basketball had always kind of kept me out of trouble, right? I didn't smoke weed. I wouldn't even try weed. I was like, I'll drink a little bit, but my conditioning is important. I'm an athlete. I have to maintain that. And so after they cut me, it was like, I think maybe a couple days after I started smoking cigarettes, maybe a month later, I started smoking weed, 15. And it was all, kind of downhill from there.
What are based off of that, obviously, because this is a story that I feel like I've heard before of sports being the thing that keeps a kid out. Yeah. And then something happens with that, whether they can't play for this reason or that reason. And it's like, well, fuck it. You know what I mean? Looking back, what do you think are some stories that you believed about yourself as a kid?
Oh, well, I definitely dealt with insecurities, right?
Yeah.
For sure. I mean, not good enough type thing. Don't have what everyone else around me has. So self-value was shot for the most part. But then again, it was like overcoming that in the wrong ways. I was good at a lot of things, but I found something I was good at. It was being tough and then selling weed and making money that way. And it was like, so now I've got cash and I've got a lot of money. At one point I was living in hotels for 6-7 months straight. So I was just partying. I was, and so.
How old were you?
16, 17.
Damn.
Yeah. But as I was able to, 100 to 150 a night, plus still have a lot of money for that long. So I was doing pretty well. Kept getting arrested. That wasn't good. Back when weed was still, big deal.
Yeah.
And cops, they were always around my house, looking for me slipping. They were always, if they saw me, they were pulling me over for sure. Every time. Even if I was in a car full of people, that's why I would lean back. They pull us over or something. Hope they didn't notice me because everybody's getting pulled out of the car if they see me.
Yeah.
And sounds familiar.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I tried to change my self-image in my own mind that way because I saw some form of value that I had now, right? Something that people wanted. Then I started kicking it with people a lot older than me. I was 17, they were like 25, 26, dating girls that age, and it interfered with a lot of my development, I think, as a person. I mean, as far as like, I don't know, being well-rounded at that age, to a degree I was, but I was in mischief, right? And so I was away from the people who were like positive. It was weird though. It was different. It was a different childhood. I had to grow up fast, honestly. My sister's like 6.5 years younger than me. So I spent a lot of time pretty much half-ass raising her because, again, mom wasn't around a whole lot. I was 10, my sister was 4. So there's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah.
So you learn, you grow up and you kind of learn, innocence is lost early. So I don't know. To a degree you mature. It's weird because at times I'd feel like an adult, but also still a kid, but not really able to truly, don't get me wrong, I enjoyed childhood. I was, going miles on my bike with friends when I was 8, 9, 10 years old.
No, but your level of responsibility was not that of a 10-year-old when you were 10.
No.
Yeah, and that's what happens when you have, your dad is amazing and he held it down, and, he was, obviously he had to go make money. And so it was like, even if you have so many fond memories, you were 12, having to do things that a lot of 12-year-olds maybe don't have to, so yeah.
So you got to a point, obviously, at a young age where something completely life-altering happened.
Yeah.
You were charged with
countless. So at one point I had 19 charges. I had I don't know.
How old were you?
I was 19. Just a couple months past my 19th birthday for something that had happened when I was 18.
Mm.
And so the charges, I honestly, I don't even remember. I had 6 kidnapping charges, 4 or 5 burglary charges, numerous robbery and attempted robbery charges. It all totaled out to 19 charges.
What year was this?
This was 2003.
Okay.
That's when I was arrested, actually, of all things, on August 31st. Right?
Ryan's birthday.
2003. And it's weird, right?
That's really
I know,
weird.
It's a trip. Because I still remember when he first told me his birthday. I was like, no shit. I got busted that day, man. Fuck.
Your birthday's cursed.
Cursed, right? And so...
well, Ryan got arrested on my birthday.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
My 10th birthday.
Oh, that's right. You were at they were actually throwing a party for you, right? And okay, I remember your mom telling me a little bit about this. Okay.
He was going to the store to get milk and he got pulled over.
Jesus, man. That's...
These birthdays, man. We got to turn it around for these birthdays.
I'm telling you, though, and it's... So, I was arrested for what was called a robbery, right? And so, a little bit of context. So, I sold weed. I sold a little ecstasy and mushrooms occasionally, mostly weed though. That was my thing. And I lived by a weird code. It was my own moral code. I thought it was my own form of ethics because integrity, oddly, has always been really, really important to me. It's something my dad drilled into me. He always said, I'll never forget it. Integrity is the change you give a blind man, right? That pretty much sums up the way he lived his life. And so that, I internalized that a lot. And I still, for the most part, behaved that way at that time, even in my nonsense. But so being involved in kind of the drug dealing game, one of the things that comes along with that is the risk of robbery, right? Somebody trying to take you because you're in the streets, you're essentially living a street life type thing, and there are rules to the game, right? It's assumption of risk, right? You assume the risk that the cops can kick in your door, that somebody else can kick in your door trying to take your shit. So for me, civilians were off limits. I said, no, anybody who's not involved in the game is, you don't mess with them. But if somebody was selling, I started targeting a few people. And so I carried out a few robberies of people who were selling larger quantities, other cities sometimes. And this was 16, I think I started doing that. And, carrying a gun. And by the time I was ended up maybe a year and a half, almost 2 years. And I was I don't know, this is too risky. There'd been some close calls with some stuff. And I was like, this just isn't really for me. I can make money just selling. It's just not worth it. So what I did, a lot of people, I don't know, watching may not remember this, but there's a magazine called High Times, right? At least there was back then. I don't know, it might be a, internet magazine now, and I'm old, so who knows?
I don't remember that one.
Exactly. See, you're proving my point. So it's called High Times Magazine. It's essentially a cannabis connoisseur type thing. All different types of, back then, it wasn't like, there were no dispensaries, didn't exist. So it was like all the new different strains, stuff like that. But in the back, they sold fake stuff. They called it incense, had no THC content, had no smell, but it looked really good. It looked like some of the best, back then it was just chronic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Good weed was chronic. So I came up with the idea of like, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sell this, because you could get a pound for like $200.
Mm.
This is back when a pound cost $3,500 to $4,000. So it was a lot of money. And I'd done a few of those. Sold, either a few ounces, half pound type thing.
So like sold counterfeit weed, basically.
Exactly. Yeah,
okay.
exactly.
Yeah.
And, I would line the top of it with some really skunk weed so that if they opened it, they could smell it. And then I would always have, like, I had an MO down of how I would do it.
Yeah.
And then I would smoke with them. I'd have another, half ounce or whatever, look just like, I made sure to get stuff that looked just like it though. And then we'd smoke, right? I was like, you want to try it? You can open it if you want. I got no problem. You weigh it, but if you want to try it, I got some too. I'm, always looking to smoke, right? So yeah, I would go and they'd get high, happy, and they wouldn't realize until later. I mean, whenever I set it up, they didn't know who I actually was. They didn't know my real name, didn't know any of that. I would set it up through a third party who knew them, who was down to get a cut and who could play dumb, like, oh man, I don't know, I did business with him before. He was cool, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so on, September 19th, 2002, set up a deal with these rich kids who go to Loyola Marymount, live in Playa del Rey. It was like a Thursday night, remember? And me and my buddy Marcos, my co-defendant, he's like kind of like a brother to me though. We set it up again through a third party. And it was like, I don't know, it was a bunch of them. They were partying. It was like 8-10 kids there. I say kids because we were all kids then.
Mm-hmm.
They were a couple of years older than me. But roll in, introduce myself and get to business. We were there for a half hour, drinking, smoking with them. And then we leave. I got them for $4,000, sold them a pound of fake weed. And they obviously end up realizing it's fake. And about an hour and a half to 2 hours later, first they leave the location and go somewhere else. And then they call the cops. They even admitted they were arguing about calling the cops. A lot of them, I don't think a lot of them weren't trying to lie. A lot of them were just drunk there.
Mm-hmm.
But they had lost a lot of money and they were pissed, obviously. And so they called the cops and said it was a robbery. Said we came in with a gun and a sword. Yeah, it was this is the funny thing about it is like the cops were our best witnesses. The first two officers who responded to the scene saw right through what they were. They saw it was bullshit.
Mm.
The report, I sent you a copy of the report, I think. Yeah. And like literally the entire 1-page report is dedicated to all the lies these people are telling them at the scene.
Mm. Sword is so fucking crazy.
Right. And this is the thing they could never keep their story straight. So it was like between the 10, 11 people, it went from a 3.5-foot sword to a 2-foot sword to a 1.5-foot sword to a butcher knife. They couldn't, because they didn't get their story straight. Most of them were
between
inebriated.
Them. Yeah.
Exactly. And they, literally in the report, the cops are saying they continue to look at each other and ask what happened next in front of the cops. Right. The cops asked them, well, why did you leave? Why didn't you call police right away?
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, well, we were scared and they stole all our cell phones. The very next line is the officer saying, and then we observed multiple victims having cell phones in their waistbands and in their pocket. So they were lying. Mm-hmm. And they had no answers for that at trial, obviously. But it was just too many of them. It was too many of them. They came from privilege. Little did I know the judge was an alumni of their school. I didn't know that until years after I was in prison. My attorney, Sean Kennedy, he's a professor at Loyola now, but he found that out because right after the trial, before sentencing, one of these victims went and tried to get an internship with the judge.
Wow.
Because he was pre-law. And so the judge is, oh, well, it's a conflict. I can't really do that. But I'm going to recommend you for the DA's office, the same one that's prosecuting me. Yeah. So I'm going to recommend you for them. He seemed like a good guy, upstanding guy. And he ended up getting an internship with the DA before we were even sentenced.
Wow.
Yeah. So there was a lot of school. I'll never know. I may never know what kind of connections their families had with LMU, alumni. We all know that those associations are pretty close, especially people with influence. So we'll never know. Maybe one day, but
well, like you said, trial
was...
That's obviously a absolutely insane life experience.
Yeah.
I want to know about like your mindset, your emotional experience, your family's experience. Like, what was it like?
God, well, it was like a 2-week trial because there were so many witnesses. And, you have to, so when you're in the county jail, I'm sure Ryan has told you about this.
Yeah.
But so I was inside, so I spent 2 years in LA County fighting the case, right? Because my bail was like $7,652,000.
Wow.
Because what they do is they stack charges on you. So each charge carries, correlating value. So say kidnapping, for instance, is $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
So if you got 6 kidnapping charges, that's $6 million.
Damn.
Right. So there's no way I was ever getting out.
Yeah.
I wasn't bailing out.
Yeah.
And so fighting the case, it was, you go to court, you get up at 3 a.m. and you already don't sleep well there. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then you wait 3 hours to go, like, get on a bus in chains to go to court. And then when trial is finally rolling around and you're facing, at one point I was facing 150 years and 6 life sentences. That's what the first time the lawyer came, it was a public defender before I had my private counsel. And he sits down, he's like flipping through it just nonchalantly, like this is another day for him. He's like, yeah, you're looking at it like, about 150 years. Well, you got all these enhancements too. Yeah, about 150. And let me see, 1, 2. Oh, yeah, about 6 life sentences. But, And he's like just nonchalantly. And I'm 19 years old. I'm a child, right? Thinking I'm grown. And that was my first court appearance.
You must have been terrified, really.
It's weird. It's weird because certain parts of you start to shut down emotionally to survive, because emotion is a vulnerability. It's a weakness inside. So without you even realizing it, parts of you start to harden and deaden, and that's why I always joke, you always say it's bullshit, but I got a wall of stone around my heart, right? Yes, I'm kind, I'm empathetic, all that type of stuff, but it's still hard for me it's like I don't cry. I don't remember.
Oh, we're going to get that out of you, buddy.
Good luck with that.
No.
But, good luck with that.
You're primed for it. I can see it in your eyes. I can see the glisten.
I doubt it.
I was talking to his sister. I was at her house a couple weeks ago, and I was sitting on her couch, and we were talking about how you don't cry. And I was like, have you ever seen him cry before? And she was like, well, yeah, when we were kids, he had a pet duck, and he had to give away his duck, and he was crying so hard.
I love that duck.
First of all, he had a pet duck in an apartment.
Yes.
And that's actually pretty crazy. Did it live in the bathtub?
No. So I had, Santee Alley downtown, right?
Of
where
course
you can buy anything.
Yeah.
Okay. You can buy anything at Santee Alley for anybody not from LA. So I was actually with a friend and his parents and his brother. And so we were walking down Santee Alley, and I see a cage full of ducks. Like, all these things are adorable, right? Like, they're adorable. So I'm like, and they're small. So I'm like, fuck, I'm just going to buy one. I don't care. What are they going to do? And took it home. I named it Mallard, right? Yeah, right. And so it imprinted on me, would follow me all over the house. And so, it was sweet. It was really sweet. But we didn't, this is before internet, right? And so we didn't know what to feed it. We're feeding it bird seed and shit. Duck's not supposed to eat bird seed. Right? They're supposed to eat fish and other stuff.
He got sick.
He got a little sick. And so we found a vet. Well, my mom found a vet. Like, it was like a rescue for fowl. I was bawling the whole way there. Yeah. So
I was bawling when we put down Jasmine, my first dog. Okay, we're not getting into it though.
Okay.
But
so back to trial.
Yes.
Okay, back to trial.
Okay, so walk us through the moment you were convicted and what that came with.
That was fucked, because they deliberated for like 2 days. And so this is probably the most heart-wrenching part of it, because we go in and they start, the most serious charges are read first. So by that time, we still had 4 kidnapping charges. Each one carries life. So they read off the first verdict and they say not guilty of kidnapping.
Mm.
And it was kidnapping in the commission of a crime, 209B. That's the penal code. And then, so if they read off, this is for the first charge, first count, not guilty of the 209B, which is, the more serious life offense, then not guilty of just kidnapping. And I'm like, oh my God, we're going to get acquitted.
Yeah.
Oh, but guilty of false imprisonment, which is a lesser included offense. Right. And then it was the same thing. They read all the kidnapping and they all came back false imprisonment. Then they came back with the gun enhancements and the burglary, so by the time I had like 12 charges that I was convicted of. Damn. But they knew something wasn't right. Because not only did they acquit us of the kidnapping charges, there was a burglary charge that they came back 1101 not guilty. But they knew something, but they weren't going to let us go. Well, the problem is that juries, they're never told how much time you're facing. So they had no idea I was facing a 28-year sentence. Right? They don't know. Most people think, oh, he'll get a few years. We'll just come back. Can't let him go. We think he did something. We don't know. We don't believe anybody, whatever it is. Yeah. I just remember going back. We were just sitting there. We didn't really talk. There was no crying. It was just like kind of dead inside. Cause you know how much time you're facing.
Wow.
Right. Like essentially it's life. I mean, when you're 20 years old, the thought of 20, 30 years in prison, that's the end of your life.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it was just kind of a blank to a degree, because there's just how do you comprehend that at that age?
Yeah,
no,
because your whole life is stolen now, and you have to have ridiculous hope, baseless hope.
Did you ever think you were going to be able to get it overturned?
I did. I really did. I thought I had solid grounds. I thought because of the judge wouldn't let us question them at all about drug dealing. Wouldn't let us say a word about it to them. But we couldn't do that. That was our entire defense, and we couldn't do that. So all of the victims, we couldn't question them about any of that. And so I figured that was a solid claim, along with other things. I mean, the DA compared us to the 9/11 terrorists in his closing argument, and it was like, 4 years after 9/11. And even the jury was like, what the fuck? What's this dude, the way he's talking about it? It was to inflame the passions and prejudices. That's the term, of a jury, to get them to follow their heart as opposed to the facts.
Right.
And so.
And it's prejudice to say something like that.
Yes. Yeah. Well, because you can't demonize.
Right.
You can focus on the facts.
Yeah.
But when you're comparing two people who are convicted of robbery or facing conviction for robbery, and you're sitting there calling them pretty much terrorists and how they terrorize these people. And so that was just the case was almost reversed on appeal, on direct appeal. It's a published opinion, and they blasted, like they roasted the DA over what he said, but harmless error. That's one of the most common things with prosecutorial misconduct claims. They're almost always resolved against the defendant, regardless of how bad the error is.
Wow.
Yeah.
Harmless, right?
Exactly.
28 years in prison, that's harmless.
So
Exactly.
you were convicted of 28 years.
I was sentenced.
I'm sorry, you were sentenced to 28 years.
That was so about 3 months later, June 24th, I believe, 2005. I was sentenced to 28 years, 4 months in prison.
So how long did you actually serve?
4 months shy of 21 years. No, 3 months shy of 21 years.
And your co-defendant, how much time did he get?
He got 22 years because it's the way they had cobbled together these charges. They only found him guilty of 1 gun enhancement. They found me guilty of 3.
Okay.
So 16 years, 8 months of my sentence was gun enhancements.
Wow. Wait, can I ask one more question?
Of course.
Did you run into Marcos in prison? Did you ever do any time together in the same facilities? How was that?
A very short period. It was weird because we hit reception. So after you get sentenced, you go from the county jail.
Wait, this is what I wanted to ask, though, what it felt like when he first got to prison. Go ahead. And then
I'll lead up to that afterwards.
You can say it.
Okay. So they wake you up at like 2 a.m, I think, right? Then you go, they put you in a tank with couple dozen other people packed in there like sardines waiting. They call it catching the chain, right? Because you're about to be put in a chain. And
Ryan wrote me that in a letter.
Oh, did he?
We were going to use it as a title for something.
Okay. And so you catch the chain and you wait around forever, and then you roll up to Delano in Bakersfield or near Bakersfield. And, it's like a fortress, right? It's the shit you see in the movies for the most part. Gun towers and all that, walking the catwalks and all that type of shit. And again, I'm literally just turned 21 like a month and a half before, because I got to reception July 15th, 2005. And it's a different world. And then I'm having to deal with the racial politics, right? Being Creole, half black and half white and looking like me. Everything's race-based, right? Everything in prison, at least in California prisons. More on the West Coast, not that way so much on the East Coast from a lot of the things I hear. But out here, it's super segregated. Everything, where you sit on the yard, where you work out, what basketball court you play in, what shower you use.
Wow.
They're all designated. Certain races have certain areas, right?
And who's that set up by?
The shot callers. Generally, it's established when a yard first opens. Most of them have been open for years. So I'll get into this a little bit because I ended up at a prison that was brand new. So we were at war over everything. But so you go to, ended up at Old Delano, and it's just, it's shocking. You're a kid, and it's like, again, you think you're grown. 19, 20 years old, we all think we're fucking just on top of the world, grown-ass adults, don't know shit, think we do. But so you go there, and it's a screwed up reality check. And so I cut my hair and just started, adjusting the politics. There were rumors. People actually had this one white dude I was in the county with, who I was pretty tight with. And he gave me like a warning to a degree. He's like, yeah, they're talking about you, like, why are you running with the blacks? And he knew I was mixed, but most people don't. Most people don't know what Creole is. At least most white people don't. But it's like a unique subculture in the black community, primarily from Louisiana, some in Mississippi. You got Louisiana Creole, and then you got Haitian Creole, right? It's a little bit different. But again, looking like me, they always assumed I was white. They always assumed I was a white Crip, because that's the thing. There are a lot of white guys who end up joining Crip gangs. And then because they grew up in the hood.
You taught me that.
Yeah,
I had no fucking idea.
Yeah, it's a thing. It's like a big thing, actually. And but it's on site with them, because the whites see it as like betrayer of their race type thing, because they choose to associate with the blacks instead of the whites. And they assumed a lot that about me for the most part. So for about 5 years, I was at war with the whites. I was at reception for only 2 months, which back then was short. But the only reason it happened was because they had just opened up Kern Valley, which was at that time the newest prison. There was only 1 yard open; the rest were empty. When I got there was still concrete dust on the walls and ceiling from the construction. They had never had anybody in them, and so September 26, 2005. It's weird. I remember dates. It's weird. I know, but it was the day before my sister's birthday. That's one of the reasons why I remember. I get to Kern Valley, and that's like a dungeon castle type thing. You have walls that are like 30 feet high, a yard that's separated in half with 3 gunmen on the yard. There are 3, gun tower COs in the yard. In addition to every building has a gun tower too. And I don't know, you see a lot of fucked up shit. It's what they call 180 level 4. Which is maximum security. And when you go there, your classification, lots changed now. People go there with a lot of time and end up on lower levels. But back then, you had over 25 years, you were going straight to a 180 level 4. And it was a war zone, because, when I first hit that yard, it was nothing but dirt. There were no tables, workout bar. There was nothing. So every time they bring something new, we're at war.
Oh.
Because it's territory to fight over.
Wow.
And everybody has to establish dominance, right? And so a lot of riots, a lot of stabbings. I told you I got stabbed in the yard a couple of years after that. And, I was just, lucky I can fight.
Who'd you get stabbed by?
2 white guys.
Okay.
They came after me, stabbed me in the back, and I knocked one out. and the other one then lit up the other one. And he went down. We ended up they were shooting tear gas and shit like that. And so, but I was just
Really
lucky.
war.
Do you have a
Yeah.
scar?
Yeah.
I want to see it after.
Okay. Looks like a bullet hole, like right by my spine. It's like a quarter of an inch to the right, and I'd be paralyzed.
Oh my God.
It was like that close. It's so close, like probably less than a quarter of an inch.
Oh my God.
So I knew something was odd. See, it was kind of a setup because I'd been fighting. You know me, I fight the administration, right? This is before I really knew what I was doing.
Rages against the machine in a way that
You don't even know. We're going to get into it. We don't even need to. This is just foreshadowing.
Yeah.
So I was fighting to get my racial status changed because everything is done by race in there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I was trying to get it changed in the computer to either black or other, so that it didn't list me as white. Because that is what was causing the problems. If I'd been listed as white, if I was listed as black or other, the whites wouldn't have had grounds. It would have started some shit, you know. And even when they stabbed me, it led to a riot. You know, when we came off lockdown.
Damn.
I wasn't there. I was in the hole. But yeah, it was a fucked up situation. You know, you live in. It's weird because I don't talk about that aspect of it so much. But yeah, every time you leave your cell, you know you may not make it back. That's the thing. Like you walk out and, you know, you have to carry a knife because, I mean, everyone's got a knife. I mean, they got knives buried in the yard. Whoa. Yeah, they would have to go, like, during searches, they would bring the metal detectors out and search the grass in the whole yard and dig it up and find pieces everywhere.
And you're talking about this was on a yard that's up and coming, or this was just specifically that time in state prison was...
Both.
Yeah, okay.
But it was a really bad time. I mean, look, it's every decade or so it gets better.
Yeah.
Less violence.
Yeah.
But at that time it was still, I mean, it wasn't like the 70s or 80s or anything like that, but it was still bad. We were still like riots happen all the time. People got killed all the time, you know? So, you know, that was a regular thing, especially in those types of yards. So that yard in particular, I mean, you can look it up. It's one of the most violent prisons in California, you know, because the entire prison is all 180 yards.
Kern Valley?
Yeah, Kern Valley. But yeah, so that was the introductory to prison. Those were my first couple years in prison dealing with just the constant violence.
What does it feel like to be in prison? What the fuck goes through your mind?
You know, once you adjust to it.
Yeah, and like, how do you get through it?
You know.
How do you adjust?
Mental resiliency. That's something I've had. I mean, a lot of trauma growing up, right? So if you are able to, like I said, turn those parts of yourself off that would cause pain, so emotions,
wow,
empathy,
wow, because
that's how you survive. You abandon anything that could be a weakness.
How do you turn it off?
Over time.
Does your body just do it without you actually trying to?
It's not a conscious thing. I can say that. It's not something like I'd never just go there and sit like, okay, I'm going to be fucking emotionless now. You know? I didn't, you know, what it is so you see enough violence, I think, and that deadens you inside.
Yeah.
It's what do they call it? Moral disengagement. Right. There's a term as in psychology. It's something that, you know, they refer to like the Nazis, police in general. The ability to see someone as not human so you can treat them as less than human.
Yeah.
And it's a common thing with prison guards, obviously, right? Because they treat us like garbage. So to a degree, that's pretty much what happens. You see enough screwed up stuff and it's because it's survival. You either survive or you don't.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I chose to survive.
And how did the experience change over time? I guess it's just that you get more and more used to it and that you kind of, or I guess even, I mean, prison I feel like has changed in the last 20 years in California.
Yeah,
so
it has, but you do, I mean, it becomes a routine, right? Because that's the thing, humans we adapt.
Yeah. And
you learn. If you pay attention, the one thing I did is I spent a lot of time around like older cats, OGs, right? So I asked questions. I am not above asking questions, right? So, because that's how you learn. So I'd ask, you know, what's this? What's that? How do I conduct myself? And I remember this old brother in the county jail. So this is kind of where I started to learn you have to let go of empathy, right? He's like, look, shit's going to go down in there. It happens no matter what. If you see somebody getting stabbed, you see somebody getting stomped out, you step over the body, then don't get blood on you. Because if you get blood on you, they're going to think you're involved. You can't try to help anybody. That's not an option. And so once that actually happens and you're in that type of, and you literally have to step over a body, just those experiences, they accumulate, I think, and it hardens you.
Yeah.
That's just what it is. And that's like when I say, again, the hardened heart is real. It's very real. And, it sucks. I've honestly, many times I've wondered if I'll be able to ever fully shake that.
I don't know if you know this, but a week after Ryan died, and obviously we'll talk all about this, but I just have to tell you this, but a week after Ryan died, you wrote a letter to my parents, basically saying, Michael and Kathy, we've known each other for a long time, and I haven't been able to adequately express my grief to you. Like, I've built walls around my heart to try to protect myself, but I feel like I need to try to express as best as I can, like, how important Ryan was to me and how much I loved him. You don't even know the level of sob that I experienced. It was like, it was one of the most, I'll never forget that moment of reading that letter. And then you called my mom and I was like, I need to talk to him. I need to talk to him. And I was like talking to you on the phone and I was like, you can call me whenever you want. I need to speak to you.
That was the first time we ever talked,
That was the first time.
Like actually like on the phone, like
it was
that,
like
other than passing a visit. Yeah.
Well, we saw each other in the visiting room and you were a regular person in my life, but we didn't personally chat, And then I read that letter and I remember just being like, so beyond touched because I could feel you trying to push through everything that you had to build to keep yourself alive. You know what I mean? And I remember it being such a cathartic moment of like, oh, I'm so grateful for this person that like has so much love inside of them and has so much love for Ryan. And it was such a moment. And like, anyways, I just wanted to tell you that.
I appreciate it. Yeah, it was just something that, I don't want to get into it too much, but we've talked about it. I had spoken to him the night before, you know, and,
we'll get to that.
Sucks, yeah.
We'll get to that.
That was a beautiful thing though. And it proves that you have not hardened your heart as much as you might think.
It's true. He talks a big game, but I'm like, okay.
He's a softie. He literally just hangs out with dogs all day. So that's how we know. That was the first cue.
Hangs out with dogs, gets people, advocates for people for free. Like, okay, Mr. Tough Guy.
And you don't get to have
you can do good things. You can do good things and still, but yeah, go ahead. I'll let you, it's your show.
It's my show. It's my hands.
Yeah, exactly. You're right.
No, but I like her asking you, how did it feel to be in prison? I think that it's really important for people to understand what you go through on a day-to-day basis and like what are the hardest parts of it? What are you being deprived of? Like what is that experience like? And also how does it feel to know that this is your life and this is going to be your life for a long time? Like talk me through that.
Well, as far as like knowing it's going to be your life, I all the way up until maybe 2015, 2016, I still had hope that I would and again, it's what led me to become a fighter with the law. But the day-to-day is like, a lot of it is mundane, oddly, right? Because it's the same shit.
Ryan used to say that.
It's very mundane. I mean, you're probably the hardest parts are, so I spent about a year in the hole by myself. And this is before nowadays they get TVs and radios and shit because so many people kill themselves back there, right? I've seen that happen several times. And, I'm in a cell by myself. You're so isolated that you're just stuck with your thoughts.
Yeah.
Which I remember, because I always like to sculpt, right? So I remember making, I got a hold of a paper clip and I started carving a bar of soap. It was pretty nice actually and turned into a crucifix. I was going to try to send it to my grandmother because her birthday was coming up, I think.
You were going to send your grandmother a soap crucifix?
Yeah, I had carved it, but it never made it through the mail. I sent it legal to my lawyer, but he never got it.
Oh.
But so it was a creative outlet to a degree because I love to read. I mean, that's how I got into reading a very eclectic collection of books so you're in the hole and so you're in a cell, you're locked down. Really, people say 23 hours a day. It's 24 hours a day for like 72 hours. And you get out like every 72 hours for a shower for 5 minutes.
Oh
right? So you bird bath in the sink. That's another, I'm sure Ryan's told you plenty of that.
Of course.
But so when they come around once every maybe 2 weeks with a book cart, if you're lucky, every 2 weeks, it's supposed to be like, twice a week, but what it's supposed to be and what it actually is are two different things. So when they come around, they don't even let you, like, they're just moving fast. Like, grab something, I'm going, or you don't get shit. So you grab the fattest book you can get, right? The thickest book you can get, so you have something to, like, really read. In between that, you're trying to, imagine being in a room that's, let's say, back here from not even this far out, maybe like this far out and all the way to maybe about here. That's your world. That's your entire world.
It's like a bathroom, the size of a bathroom.
A big bathroom. It is a bathroom. You got your toilet. Yeah. You live in a bathroom.
You're basically
right?
living in your bathroom.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it is.
Yeah.
But that's your entire world for months on end.
That is fucking crazy.
That's why people lose it back there. That's why it's one of the reasons why they passed all these rules. Like I said, back then, you got none of your appliances. Now people get all kinds of shit so that they don't lose their minds.
Yeah.
And then when I was actually in there, when they changed the rule and the cops were so pissed that they had to give us TVs. It was like towards the end of the year that I was in there. And they had to issue us our TVs, but they refused to give us the cable cords.
Wow.
So it was static. So so some of the most creative people I've ever met were in prison.
For sure.
And I was one of them to a degree. So what I did is I was able to get a hold of a paper clip. Not a paper clip. I was going to say this one was a staple. This one was a staple. A staple was left on an envelope because they take all that off anything that somebody could slit their wrist with, pretty much. That's what it's about. It's anything, because that's really the biggest danger back there. And so I was able to get a hold of a staple, straighten it out a little bit, and I had a chip bag, a Mylar chip bag, right? Mylar's a metal. So I was able to, thinly slice it, and I made an antenna. And was able to pick up channels like that.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
You legend.
You guys are brilliant. Okay?
Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, that was the only way you're going to have anything to watch. You got to figure something out. You have to. So that became kind of my motto in life. I kind of live by two ideals. Integrity, of course, but you live fearlessly because you have to.
Yeah.
If you let fear interfere with what your goals are in life, you'll never accomplish them. Right. And then you always find a way. That's how I don't give a fuck how difficult it is. I know I'm not going to complain about it. I'm going to find a solution. That's the best way to do it.
Well, I feel like what you just said is kind of the perfect segue into what we wanted to ask next, which is, what is the relationship between the incarcerated individuals and the guards? What's the energy?
Hostile.
Yeah.
It's they don't like us.
Yeah.
99.9% of them would prefer to see us suffer to the greatest extent possible. And they'll outwardly say, don't come to prison if you don't like it. You get that a lot. That's like one of their favorite go-tos, right? And, they kind of get a kind of a malicious joy off depriving us of the little things we do have. So we say it's yard time. Oh, no yard, sorry. You see them laugh about it. Sit there, get a kick off of it. Search your cell, toss the shit out of your cell as retaliation because you didn't lock it up fast enough, or you wanted to use the phone when it wasn't your time, or you had the audacity to file paperwork against them. Then, they would, I remember coming back when I was a Tehachapi. I remember, I don't know how many, my house got hit so many times. And they would throw all of your property out of the containers on the floor in a pile with your celly stuff. So, you had to figure out whose shit was what, especially canteen and stuff like that. Literally a big ass pile. Everything on your shelf is in a pile on the floor.
By the way, canteen is like goods from the store.
Commissary.
So they call it commissary. Yeah. So it's snacks, noodles, things that you can get from the prison store, basically. So that's what canteen is.
Exactly. So they got joy off that type of stuff. But so I did time at 11 prisons. So they get another gleeful joy out of sending you as far away from your family as they can. It's a joke. Like we joke, it's like, because you go to committee once a year. And so people always laugh, oh yeah, I'm going to tell them, I want to go to Sacramento, so they'll send me to LA, Right?
Yeah.
Because
reverse psychology.
they're going to do the opposite of what you ask.
Wow.
Every time.
So I feel like this is exactly the vibe that got you into the law. How and when did you decide to start studying the law?
So I actually picked up a law book before I even left the county jail. The first one, I didn't know. I knew absolutely nothing about the law, right? And after I was convicted, because I remember I told myself, I said, I'm going to learn every possible thing I can about the law, because I'm not going to just take this shit lying down. I got screwed. I got screwed by the system. It's obviously a broken system, So I was angry. And I tried to funnel that rage into something productive for the most part. And I just picked up, there was a criminal procedure book and a penal code book this dude, my neighbor, had. And I would sit on the floor in his cell because he didn't want him leaving his cell. They were expensive books. And I just study. I just read. I couldn't make heads or tails of a lot of it because I had no base off of which to go. But I got to reception and I fought to go to the library to make sure I could go to the law library. And I started understanding how law was framed, how cases were argued, decided, that type of stuff. I studied briefs that were written by other lawyers, and slowly but surely I developed my skills. I lived in the library.
Okay, well, continuing with this law speak.
How do you practice law when you're incarcerated, and what kind of work did you do for people?
So there's an exception to the unlawful practice of law for prisoners. There's 2 cases from the Supreme Court. One's Bounds versus Smith. The other one's Lewis versus Casey. And
it was me. Lewis versus me.
Casey with an S, sorry.
I was fighting with Lewis at the Supreme Court.
One day, who knows?
Boom.
Right? Speak it into an existence. But you're allowed to help people because there are no other remedies. There's no other available assistance. Lawyers don't really help people inside. There are certain laws that were passed in the 90s, the Prison Litigation Reform Act and the Anti-Terrorism and Effective Death Penalty Act that we all know so much about here, made it so that it disincentivized lawyers to take those cases. Prisoner rights, post-conviction collateral review, which is like habeas corpus after your direct appeals are done. So people need help, right? That's the whole thing. And one thing, despite all of my rough edges, I've always liked to help people. It was something that was in me, right? I never liked to bully. A lot of my fights were over that, somebody bullying somebody else when I was a kid. So it was hard once I got my skills up. I remember the first thing I ever won, it was 2011. And it was bullshit, small claims court thing. They had issued a wrong ruling. And I'm learning on the fly, first briefs I've ever written, that type of thing, right? And they come back with an order granting the writ. And I was like, oh shit, I can actually do this.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I might actually have a shot of making some changes of some kind. Because before that, I had filed a lot of grievances and won a lot of them. But that's just prison. It's even though it's difficult to win because they will come up with any bullshit to deny you. Mm-hmm. But I was very thorough. Most of the cases, this was always what sucked. It made it hard to win anything for people. I was always playing cleanup. Mm. I mean, Ryan's case, I was playing cleanup of mistakes by other people.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. What are your biggest wins?
Oh, my buddy had 90 something years and I got him back on a resentencing.
Shut up.
I got some time off his sentence.
How much time?
It was only a few years because they fucked him over when he went back.
Oh.
I've gotten a lot of, counsel appointed. I've won a few COA, the certificates of appealability. And
that's amazing though, to give people the opportunity to even just get there, that was the whole fight in Ryan's case. That large point.
Let's go, legend.
I don't know about
Let's
that.
go.
I always tell Jared he's first ballot to heaven, and he's like, no.
I don't think
I'm like,
so.
no,
Yeah.
trust me.
And it was just, and you see, again, these are people's lives, right? And I know all too well, because I'm at the same time I'm doing this, I'm fighting my own case.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I was fighting from 2008 all the way to like 2015, my case in federal court. But then I got more into civil because it became, over the years, I mean, Ryan's case was one of them. I fought that for 7 years, right?
Well, let's just ask now.
Shit.
Let's ask now. How did you meet him, and what was that friendship like?
It was a trip. I still remember, I remember seeing him for the first time because my cell was 106, right? There's A section, B section, C section. He was on the other side, but he got into the shower, was bullshit and talking to somebody, and the blonde hair caught me because he looked like somebody I thought that I knew in the county. There's another kid, similar, look to him. And I'm like, is that dude? I'm like, no, that's not him. That's not him. But we hadn't said a word to each other anymore at all before. So this is like, this is 2010. It's like September, October 2000. He had just gotten there.
Yeah.
He was fresh from Corcoran, right?
Yeah.
And so.
What facility?
This is Lancaster.
Okay.
This is Lancaster C Yard, right? We're in 5 building. And
he spent a lot of his time in 5 block.
He did. He was in 5 block almost the whole time I was there with him. But then he ended up like 2 block, 3 block later on towards the end when I was getting ready to leave.
Yeah.
And so I hadn't even talked to him, but somebody else came down because he had been telling people like, he got fucked over, he's innocent and that type of thing. He's looking for help. And this dude who lived above me was like, because, Ryan, he's always like real friendly and, everybody comes to me with legal questions by that time. And so, I mean, I was always in the library. This is before I worked there, but I lived there. When I'm not doing anything else, I'm in the library and I'm helping people while I'm in there for the most part. And so somebody else, because this white dude, I forget what the hell his name was, skinny dude. He's like, yeah, no, this dude's got a case, man. He's got a case.
Yeah.
And because at that point I was good, but it was still like I'd only worked on a few cases, you know, and I wouldn't, no matter how much somebody offered me, I didn't take money, I mean, the only time Ryan forced me to take canteen, like he'd just leave it by my door. And I'm like, I told you I don't want anything, fool. Like I'm not doing this for that. And
so you finally talked to Ryan.
So I finally talked to Ryan. Somebody introduced us, I think, in the library.
It's like a blind
or
date.
in the building.
Yes, it does sound like the build up.
Oh my God. So I told him, I'm like, oh, so you're from Calabasas and shit. He's like, yeah, I used to kick in Palisades. I'm like, oh shit, okay. I used to kick it out there too. So we started chopping it up, started talking, and we actually knew some of the same people. We knew we had some joint friends from that era, because he's 2 years younger than me, but that's still within, when I was 18, he was 16. So I always wonder if he was like at some of the parties I was at. I always wonder about that, because we knew there were at least like 4 or 5 people that we both knew pretty well. And so that was how we really hit it off, because then we started, talking, and then he started breaking down this case for me. Like, this is what happened, man. This is what happened. I know, I'll pay you whatever, this type of shit. And I'm like, look, I don't.
Yeah.
I'm like, just tell me about what happened. Tell me about the case. Tell me what, why are you innocent? How are you innocent? Prove it. Just show me. And so he sent me down the habeas petition that Janago had filed.
Yeah.
Right. I think it was the appellate court, because
that was Ryan's appellate attorney.
Yes, appellate and post-conviction collateral review attorney who fucked up. So he showed me the brief, and I saw the evidence. The evidence, I was like, Jesus, the photogrammetry evidence. So after I had like really dove into the evidence, I said, I need to understand like timelines and shit like that, because I need to understand if you have the time, if there's any time left. And that eventually became our primary fight, was fighting against, after I had been helping him for several months, I actually wrote to Janago, wrote him a letter. And I'm like, look, you fucked up. And respectfully, of course.
Yeah.
And I was able to get a declaration from him admitting he fucked up, admitting he missed the deadline, and had it's like he almost admitted just like being incompetent to a degree.
Yeah.
Because he didn't file a certain petition he was supposed to file on time.
And he got paid for the full thing. And
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so by the time he filed the one in the Supreme Court, it was too late. In federal court, there's a 1-year statute of limitations to file in federal court.
So you were fighting for Ryan to be able to get his right to appeal.
No, I was fighting for him to consider the merits of his claims. Right. So Janago had fucked up. Janago had filed something late. I filed a slew of petitions to try to stall the time from running in state court, present some of the claims that I had identified that Janago hadn't, and to finally get him into the federal court.
Right.
The problem is that by the time I came into the picture, the time had already lapsed. So as an exception to the time bar, we argued the actual innocence, right? Because in federal court, there's no freestanding claim of innocence. So in other words, you can't come with your only claim saying I'm innocent, this is the evidence, so I have a right to reversal. No, it doesn't work that way. You can be innocent, but if you can't identify actual errors, your conviction is going to stand.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you guys were becoming besties. What was your friendship like? Tell us some stories about Ryan, because it's so fun for us. We don't get to talk about him that much with people who know him.
Yeah, I mean, we used to kick it on. We played basketball all the time. Though he liked soccer, but he liked all sports. He'd play anything, We kicked in the library a lot so by late 2011, I got a job as lead clerk in there, and I worked there for like almost 3 years. I would say, 2.5, a little bit over 2.5 years, something like that. And so I'm the one who made the list of who came in, right? So when we'd be locked down, I'd make sure to get his name on the list so he'd get out of the cell. He was stuck in the cell. We all were. I was just out because I worked in the library. So I used to figure out a way to show he had a deadline, whether he had one or not, because that was the only way to get him in there. You had to have a court deadline, So we'd work some magic on the copier and, make sure he always had a deadline, and so, and so he'd get called in, a couple times a week, and I'd keep him in there for, 2-4 hours, whatever. So he'd have some, because, when I had first gotten there, I had fought to get, there was an extra room, there was a classroom, right? There was only room for 6 people in the library for a yard of 1,000 people. So when I got there, I said, "Man, fuck this. This is, I need to be able to do research. And if there's only 6 people, I have to wait for somebody to leave to go in." So I fought with the grievance, wrote to the prison law office, and they ended up granting the appeal and opening the extra room and converting that into extra overflow for the library. So that allowed us to have 18 people in at one time instead of 6. So you didn't have to wait on the yard, and then they moved in a bunch of hard copy books of the case
legend.
Law.
Go ahead.
I don't know about that, but I was just pissed. Again,
Jared's
I get
definitely
pissed
a
about
revolutionary.
something.
Yes.
He'd be blazing the fucking path for change. This one.
I mean, it's just the thing is that when I see something wrong, it's hard for me to stand by and just let it go.
Yeah,
that's really difficult. I try to pick my battles, but
I don't. Essentially,
abuse of authority gets me, rubs me the wrong way.
Yeah.
Right. It's why I've gone after cops, in court and internal affairs investigations. One of the main things that motivates me to do what I do. But yeah, so we spent a lot of time. He always had music playing. This dude stayed with his CD player and headphones. Always. Jerry, you got to listen to this, man. You got to hear this. We got one in his ear. He's like, man, no, I swear. I'm like, Ryan, I love you, man, but I got work to do. I'm trying to research for his case, And I'm like, Ryan, listen, do you not know? I need you to understand what I'm doing here, okay? I want you to kind of understand what this process is, so you know, what I'm arguing, why I'm arguing it, because this was always the thing, and this is what eventually led me to stop handling criminal cases, was you get transferred. It makes it almost impossible to communicate. If it weren't for how close I am to your family, I would have never been able to keep helping Ryan after I transferred,
Transferred to another facility.
To a different prison. Exactly. And so, but yeah, we spent a lot of time bullshitting. We'd always joke, because we were always at visits together, shit, we'd be bouncing between tables sometimes to a degree. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, your parents came to see me several times there. And, we talk shit. We talk hella shit. Because I come back from work as he was on the top for most of the time. He was in 5 block. He was in the top tier, right? And he was in, God, what was it? Like 211?
I think it was 212.
212, right there.
I think it was 212.
Okay, 212.
Yeah.
And because I'm in 106, so I'm down the tier on the bottom.
C5 212 is so, yeah.
Exactly. And so that's where he was at. So I go up there and talk shit. I just, what's up, fucker? And we chop it up, bullshit, sometimes, split a honey bun or something, I mean, break bread type shit, and, then I might, because if he's stuck in his cell, I go run and grab some shit for him. Oh, man, can you just go grab this real quick? And I got you, man. Just shut up. Leave me alone. Like that's how we, kind of show love, is talking shit. That's why I talk so much shit.
Yeah.
It means I usually like you. If I don't talk shit to you, then you got to work.
Of course.
That's real. That's real shit. If I don't talk shit to you,
I think we're both kind of like that too.
Yeah,
Exactly.
So it's like, and then we just, have long conversations sometimes, especially if he was down or something, whatever we were dealing, sometimes we just go in the room next door and just sit down and talk, and
thank you for being there for him.
Of course. He was a wonderful person. That was the thing. It's like there are very few. There are a lot of good people. I mean, look, there are a lot of good people inside, but there are a lot of bad people, right?
Yeah.
Like it's funny. I always talk about it. I know it surprised a lot of people. I did 21 years for something I didn't do, right? Did something, but not that. And I will always say there are people who belong in prison.
Yeah.
I've seen the dark.
Yeah.
I've seen the dark violence that happens in there.
But do you believe that they can change?
Some I don't.
Really?
Do you believe everyone's capable, but that some people will just choose not to? Or do you think some people are not capable?
I believe some people are not capable. Sex offenders, mostly, especially child abusers. You hear about some of the awful shit people do. I mean, you live around some pretty awful people long enough, and then, I think the overwhelming majority of people can change, for sure.
Yeah.
I think even some of the worst can change,
I mean, I've seen it, and I've met people.
I have too. I know people who were 4 or 5 bodies multiple in prison bodies type thing, and somehow they had that epiphany, for whatever reason, whether it's spirituality, conscience, whatever it is, you do see it. You see it more often than you would expect, especially in an environment that is the opposite of conducive to
That's
growth.
exactly what I was about to ask. So do you think that that's a place that fosters that kind of change?
No, not at all. It's you get better or become better in spite of, not because of.
Right.
That's what it is, because the conditions, the treatment, the food, everything is terrible, right? And so if you get better or grow, it's because you made a very conscious decision to do so.
Right.
And you had to fight against the waters that were flowing the opposite direction everywhere around you. You know, from, drug dealing and violence, and just everything, abuse from the guards. There's so much different shit. I mean, it'd take a lifetime to talk about.
So, hi guys. I know this is a very abrupt ending, but Casey, Jared, and I were so carried away that we were talking for over 3 hours. And since we aren't Joe Rogan, we figured we really needed to end the episode on a little cliffhanger, and hope that you return for a part 2 next week, where we talk all about Jared being released from prison after 21 years, over 2 decades incarcerated, and how surreal that experience was to finally be a free man, and what life has been like for him, what he's looking forward to. So yeah, we're so excited for you to hear the rest of the story that we have with Jared, and I love you guys so much. Thank you guys for listening, and I hope you're having a beautiful day, and I hope we get to talk soon. Bye.